This is NDTV. And you're watching NDTV Prime.
It is time once again for CNB Bazaar Buzz here on the NDTV network. I'm Siddharth Vinayak Partnkar. Let's take a look at what we have lined up for you on today's show. The Bajaj Avenger Street 180 review. Ferrari launches its latest and its fastest in India. We catch up with the Mercedes-Benz India boss on the new S-Class launch. And Toyota drives home safety amongst school children. So let's begin then with the Bajaj Avenger Street 180. Now when Bajaj decided to make the Avenger range into a family of bikes, well, at the time you got a 150 and a 220 Street. Now that 150 has gone and it's been replaced by a bigger engine 180. So that forms, let's say, the entry of that family. How is the bike to ride, and is it a significant step up from the 150? King Shukdatta spent time with it to find out.
Without a shred of doubt, cruiser motorcycles are one of the more popular motorcycle segments with customers in India. And it was Bajaj Auto which made buying cruiser motorcycles affordable for the masses with the first Avenger in 2005. In fact, the Avenger was an evolution from the Bajaj-Kawasaki collaboration product, the Kawasaki Eliminator. But what the Eliminator lacked was affordability, and that is what the Avenger was able to achieve.
Bajaj says that more and more of its customers are gravitating towards buying bigger capacity motorcycles. It was Bajaj in the first place who introduced us to affordable cruiser motorcycling. And now we have with us the new Bajaj Avenger Street 180. It is said to be replacing the 150 Avenger in India. It gets quite a few styling updates. It looks really good now, and we spent some time with it. And here's a quick lowdown on the newest cruiser from Bajaj.
Bajaj offers the Avenger 180 in only one variant, the Bajaj Avenger Street 180. Overall, the bike looks familiar with the typical Avenger styling and silhouette, but there are subtle changes. The most visible change is the blacked out look with dark alloys, blacked out exhaust and engine. It also gets a new skull-shaped headlamp and a fly screen visor to top it off. What makes the face stand out is a small strip of LED daytime running lamps at the bottom of the headlamp. Completing the Sportster look are the rubber fork gaiters up front. At the rear, there's a small padded grab rail which also serves as a functional backrest for the pillion rider. The instrument console has been redesigned with the telltale lamps moving onto a small console on the fuel tank. The meters are analog with a small digital screen displaying trip meters and the odometer. To keep the look of the bike chic and urban, Bajaj has not put any chrome elements on the Avenger Street 180. The overall fit and finish certainly goes up by a notch, but it still looks like the same Avenger we have been used to seeing all these years. The engine on the Avenger Street 180 makes 15.3 bhp at 8,500 rpm and a peak torque of 13.7 Nm at 6,500 rpm. The bike does get a little vibey off the foot pegs between 60 km per hour and 80 km per hour. As far as city riding is concerned, it does a good job. Oh, and the gearbox is slick with a light clutch, which makes shifting gears easy for the rider. The claimed fuel efficiency figure is approximately 44 to 45 km per litre.
Whatever I feel about the motorcycle, I'm going to tell it to you straight. So talking about the suspension first, it is just about plush. It's not overly soft nor is it jarring. It feels right. And the engine, of course, it's been inspired from the Pulsar 180, but this makes less power and less torque. Not that big a difference. Bajaj says that the engine is tuned to deliver a chunk of power and torque at low and mid revs. So that gives it this extra punch that you need when you're riding in the city.
About the handling, well, it is a cruiser after all, and the long wheelbase with the raked out front end does take its toll on the abilities of the bike. It is no corner carver but can filter through traffic. Braking is taken care of by a 260mm disc up front and a 130mm drum brake at the rear. Stopping power is adequate, but the feel is wooden.
Bajaj has priced the Avenger Street 180 at 85,450 rupees or so, ex-showroom Maharashtra. And it says that this is the only bike in that segment, and it doesn't have a natural rival. The closest rival that we can think of is the Suzuki Intruder, which is priced at around 98 to 99,000 rupees. So there's a big price difference, and Suzuki Intruder is a 150cc motorcycle.
So, as an entry-level cruiser motorcycle, the new Bajaj Avenger Street 180 certainly makes a very good proposition.
So the latest Bajaj bike. Now we move on to the latest Ferrari, and it has been launched in India. I'm talking of course of the 812 Superfast, and it comes with a hefty price tag like every other Ferrari, but this one is just a little bit extra special. Cyrus was at the launch.
India might not see a huge number of supercars and sports cars sold every year, but the market is definitely growing and quickly. And here is the newest entrant in the supercar segment in India, the Ferrari 812 Superfast. The 812 Superfast gets a naturally aspirated front-mounted 6.5-litre V12 engine that makes 789 bhp of peak power and 718 Nm of peak torque. These crazy numbers make it the most powerful non-hybrid Ferrari ever to make it to production. The 812 Superfast will make it from 0 to 100 km per hour in just 2.8 seconds and gets up to a top speed of over 340 km per hour. Power is transmitted to only the rear wheels, but to keep all that power in check, Ferrari has fitted the 812 with 4-wheel steering and a new traction control system called side slip control. You also get active aero all around the car. Now the 812 Superfast of course gets a brand new body as compared to its predecessor, but the genesis of the Ferrari GT, the V12 front engine GT, is still the same. So you still get that long swooping bonnet up front, that stubby little tail at the back, very reminiscent of the likes of maybe a 250 GTO from the 60s. Very typically Ferrari in design. Of course you get this brand new interior, which means new Ferrari design language, which means you get this optional screen for the passenger which shows telemetry like the top speed, the rev count, etc. So you can scare the daylights out of your passengers. Now this particular car is really well spec'd, almost the kind of spec I would have if I had the money to buy one of these. So you have carbon fiber everywhere. You have a carbon fiber steering wheel, you have the LED shift lights on the steering wheel as well. Typically Ferrari steering wheel with all the controls, including that Manettino here, which you can choose the race or sport settings with. Typically large tachometer in the center, and this car also gets one of my favorite Ferrari options, the Daytona seats. Now these are inspired, as you see, these have these lovely design elements on the seats, inspired from the 365 Daytona, very famous V12 front engine GT car from the 60s. The Ferrari 812 Superfast is a strict two-seater, but it does offer plenty of space in the rear for a whole bunch of luggage, as this is, in essence, a Grand Tourer. In fact, you can actually opt for customized luggage to match with the interior of your car too. And that brings us to the other big question, the price of the 812 Superfast. It is a large car, it is a GT, and it comes with a large price tag as well. It's 5.2 crores ex-showroom, and that of course is before you start speccing it out and before you get into the options list, which, as you can see with this car, is extensive, and you can actually get almost anything you really want out of the Ferrari customization program as well. In terms of competition, the Ferrari 812 Superfast takes on the likes of the Lamborghini Aventador S, the Aston Martin DB11, but also the likes of the Rolls-Royce Wraith and the Bentley Continental GT, all of which get a 12-cylinder engine option.
Now it's time to catch up with Roland Folger, the CEO at Mercedes-Benz India, about the new S-Class, how it's being received, and what else is happening at Mercedes-Benz. I spent some time driving around in the new S-Class with him.
Well, especially, I would say, if in India, people associate really the brand Mercedes with cars like the S-Class. So there is an emotional attachment to the car that you don't find with such an explicit in such an explicit way in any of the other cars.
Right.
And it has been our tradition as well to always introduce new technologies, safety related, comfort related especially, or even environmentally related with the S-Class for several reasons. And people have been gotten very much used to that, so hence therefore the expectation always that this is not only leading in a sense of being the most sumptuous car and the most comfortable car, but also the car which we use to bring in new innovations. And case in point, this time it was actually our Bajaj Stage 6 engine that we brought for the very first time in India, and that is able to run on Bajaj Stage 4.
In fact, I was going to ask you that straight off, so I'm glad you went there. Why was that important? I mean, you could have always brought it in, you know, in 2020 or 2019 even. Why was it important to launch it now?
Well, it was important for us to not now specifically. We said we wanted to do it as quickly as possible. That was always our target. So when we heard the announcement came through that by 1st of April 2017 our Bajaj Stage 4 fuel would be mandatorily available all throughout India, then that was for us the biggest actually signboard out there that suddenly started flashing, where we said, okay, now that we know we can get diesel in the country with a sulfur content of less than 50 ppm. Now we stand a chance, if we can do it right, to basically combine these two things that everybody else says is physically impossible. I think a big kudo goes to our engineers that have been able to work that small little engineering miracle. And yes, in the meantime, I mean, you've seen the tests from ARAI, and proof is in the pudding, as they always say. In this case, we have been able to manage this, and we are achieving values and rates that are significantly under the given maximum levels of Bajaj Stage 6 as well. So it's working.
We of course heard the car beep, and it's riddled with sensors and radars. Of
course.
And of course you have to expect that from the sort of pinnacle sedan in the portfolio. But coming back to the BS6 point, then is it also going to therefore be that much easier, the learnings you will then have from this experience, to start putting them in other cars as well?
Well, we have already started the learnings. We drove vehicles already up to 5 and 10,000 kilometers because we wanted to make sure that with any given fuel throughout India,
you don't want a customer to have an issue.
So we did that testing already with the vehicles as we're sitting in at the moment. But this was basically the starting flag, and from now on, basically, that is our commitment to the market as well. All diesel vehicles will have Bajaj Stage 6 standards once we introduce them into the marketplace.
So that's what I'm asking, because I mean, clearly the bulk of your sales are diesel, but the bulk of your sales are not coming from inline 6 engines. So for the smaller engines then, what's the plan and the roadmap?
Well, similar. We will be doing something exactly along those lines. See, we're approaching this issue from a different context. You might remember 2015 diesel ban, where there was a lot of concerns that diesels were not up to par and standard, and they were the big polluting things in the city environment. And we said, well, let's prove that wrong. And I think with now bringing diesel vehicles to emission levels that are down at the same level with petrol versions, I think that the proof again is there that this is achievable and it's doable, and that diesel that have significant benefits from a CO2 perspective, and therefore also play an important part in keeping the environment safer as far as CO2 emissions are concerned, now are really the best of both worlds.
Now, You've done the launch a few days ago. We're driving the car today, but what's the reaction you've been getting? What are your dealers telling you? The customers excited?
The customers are very excited. First of all, they love the car. The feedback has been extremely positive in that respect. They love what we've done to the grille. They naturally like the lights very much, both front and rear, where you can see a lot of changes that were used to update the vehicle accordingly. They love some of, especially, even if you sit in the back, this
screen is cool.
What we see here, the screen here, is just so much more up to date. And it was, we can openly talk about this. It was also due. So we were happy that we could come up with larger screens and make it more contemporary looking.
All right. And from the perspective of how many cars, the fact that there's a big push from your side to now do so much locally as opposed to, bringing in CBUs. Where does the S-Class fit into that overall scheme for the year?
We are basically already now with the order intakes and what we've seen from the dealers above target, which is nice to say, because there's also always this discussion about, is the E-Class, the long wheelbase E-Class, now really taking cars away from the S-Class, and we're happy to say that both of them had a surge. The S-Class recently since the auto show, but the E-Class is still continuing to sell extremely well, so there is no concern whatsoever.
Let's take a short break here on Bazaar Buzz. I come back and answer some of your questions. Keep watching.